Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Constitutional Considerations here on Tactical Review Live. I'm hoping that everything functions well. YouTube is just getting over a service outage, so everything looks good, but only time will tell. Being joined this evening once again by Elias Ward of the Liberty Review podcast. Elias, welcome. I'm
Hey, how's it
doing
going?
all right. And I do want to just take a moment, speaking of Elias, and thank you and all of the veterans who will happen to come across this stream. Thank you guys for your service on this day that we specially set aside to remember the all who gave some.
Thank you.
So while we're getting underway, we had some research kind of set up, and then kind of all managed to misplace it. I
Don't worry, I'm sure as we start talking, YouTube will accidentally have more problems. Or at least with our channel,
absolutely.
they will.
So, and speaking of the channel, guys, I've been doing some things trying to make life a little easier for everybody. Going forward, as a matter of fact, even tonight, if you want to share the live stream, you can just tell people to head to live.tacreview.com. And every week I will have that URL updated to point to that week's stream as soon as I have the new stream set up. So anytime you visit live.tacreview.com, it will either go to the waiting scheduled stream or it will go to the previous week's playback. So awesome, Riemann, welcome, and glad you got your notification. Once again, I do try to send those notifications out over social media just so that folks can actually have an opportunity to actually see the notification. And yay, speaking of notifications, stuff not working right. Well, not notifications, I guess speaking of the live streams. Not live streams, good googly moogly. Yep, it's one of those days. Okay, so that updated. I updated my social media header, and now it's broken here in OBS because, of course, it is. Oh, it would help if I actually pointed to the updated file. That always helps a ton. There we go. On Facebook and Instagram, and just this week, I've added Parler to that list. I wanted to be on another social media platform like I want a hole in the head, but Parler is at least currently claiming to be a bastion of free speech, so we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, as I say, how many others have said?
Most of them, I think.
Yeah.
And,
I definitely don't believe them anymore.
No, especially, here's the funny thing, you've got to actually go through the verification process on Parler in order to direct message anybody. So, yeah, that includes uploading pictures of identification and stuff. It's like, yay. Whatever.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
It is.
Yeah. Free speech as long as you register with the authorities. What's your ID again? Your address?
That's okay. Whatever. Malon lobe.
It's not like Google doesn't already know it.
All right. So, getting into this, as everybody's well aware, we discussed last week that we are still slap in the middle of a very contentious election cycle. As a matter of fact, here we are 8 days after election 2020, and the press is lauding Joe Biden as the president-elect. The Associated Press has called the race as if they have any real authority in the country. And the thing is that there were allegations, as there are always allegations, of widespread voter fraud. However, within the last few days, there have been some issues come to light that seem to have some factual basis. At very least, if it's not factual, there have been individuals who have gone on sworn record and have now officially perjured themselves. If it turns out to be false, that we've had some shenanigans.
Yeah. And just real quick, I mean, just to clarify something, the idea of the AP calling it, this is not new.
Right.
They've been doing this for a long time now. Because usually it's pretty clear, at least to them anyway. And election results aren't usually certified until the end of November by most states. So there's usually an unofficial tally and then an actual certification. So I just want to point that out, that it's not necessarily unheard of. It's not unusual for them to go ahead and start calling elections.
Yeah,
so, whether it's right or wrong has been debated for quite a while. This isn't the first time that it's been debated. Anybody who remembers the 2000 elections remembers how there was a lot of egg on faces in the 2000 election because they were calling states and then reversing it and stuff like that. So it's definitely been a controversy, but it's not unusual.
Correct.
Now, what Trump is doing, that's unusual.
Right. However, once again, and this... Hang on, I guess I should finish one sentence before I start just getting flabbergasted by it all. Trump is a little bit of a narcissist. You guys may have noticed that. Just a little bit. But can you imagine how insufferable he's going to be if he's vindicated in this?
That's a good point. That almost makes me want him to lose all these cases. I mean, I really shouldn't say I want him to win or lose. I don't think we're really gonna do well either way. But
yeah, it's like they said on South Park. Your choices are always a douchebag or a crap sandwich. And so it comes down to, though, once again, as I mentioned last week, I really think that Joe Biden is going to simply weaponize the ATF and completely forego any attempt or pretense to get his desired gun legislation introduced as a proper legislative measure, and will instead just use executive orders and a rogue ATF to start forcing through these.
Actually, that might actually be better for us. And I'm serious, hear me out. The NRA and other powers that be have been trying to, no pun intended, trump up Trump as this two-way godsend. Right? So they haven't touched Trump. They have not criticized him for the stuff he's done that was anti-2A. They've been quiet because that whole mentality of the lesser of two evils. Well, Trump won't do as much against 2A, so we'll just shut up and we'll just let him do whatever he wants. We won't get him angry or, we won't get on his bad side because everybody knows, as you said, Trump's a narcissist. Trump's vindictive. With Biden, NRA, and the other groups, I think might actually be more likely to immediately file suit.
That could be.
which we know these things are going to get struck down in the Constitution. Even the ones as they're putting it in have even talked about the fact that, well, banning bump stocks through EO is probably not really something within the purview of the president. But nobody wants to challenge it because he's a Republican president, and we don't want to upset the Republicans, so we're just going to shut up and take it, is the mentality, I think, of the NRA. And maybe, just maybe, because it's Biden and it's a Democrat, the gloves will come off. And they'll actually challenge it because, well, we don't, at this point now, they don't have that pretense of we don't want to upset the party.
Well, that may be.
And that's something I just thought about as you were saying that, is maybe that actually is going to be good for us, because maybe that'll actually get the NRA moving, because they won't feel like we don't want to sue one of our own, these people that claim to be on our side. There's no pretense of the Democrats from the NRA side or any other gun owner side.
Yeah. And the fact is that typically gun owners are more on our guard as a total group when there's a Democrat in that highest office.
Yeah. So maybe this is what we actually need. I mean, I hate to say it, but maybe that's what we actually need. It'll be a little bit of short-term pain, obviously, as it goes to the courts. But the courts are also usually pretty good at staying things and issuing injunctions when they feel a necessity to. So a lot of times, if something's about to go in place and then immediately gets taken up in a lawsuit, the courts are usually pretty good at staying whatever comes until it can be fought out in the courts. So, like, not allowing a change to be made while it's going through. So, as much as I hate to say it, when it comes to 2A, it might actually be a good thing for us. Because I know, like I said before, when President Obama was about to try to do some stuff, his lawyers told him, don't even try it, because you're going to get struck down immediately. Well, let's say that Biden feels a little bit more, or Harris feels like a little bit more, bold to try it out. Maybe that'll get the NRA to remember what they're actually, supposedly claim that they're existing
and,
for.
I've got to say, that's why.
And if not them, then the GOA and the other groups, and even Congress, senators.
I certainly have been a lot happier as a gun owner with Firearm Policy Coalition and Gun Owners of America and the like, because they have no qualms. If it's unconstitutional garbage, they're going to file a lawsuit. FPC has been writing suits like crazy. And Riemann, yes, it's a forced type of unity, but sometimes that's, unfortunately.
Well, I don't.
Sometimes that's what we need. And Warsaw, as long as the rank and file of who are NRA members recognize that there are other bodies where their money should have been for the last several years. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. When things come out like, instead of filing suit against this or that unconstitutional garbage, they're allowing Wayne LaPierre to spend $35,000 on a suit.
The NRA has a lot of issues. The biggest thing is the NRA. If you look at the NRA groups, the two biggest groups I take issue with are the executives, as we've seen what they've been up to, and the NRA ILA, which is legislative affairs. For instance, there are some good areas of the NRA, training and stuff like that are decent, but the ILA has been absolutely terrible. Having said that, the NRA's got the deepest pockets. So if you're going to start filing lawsuits and you're going to start doing stuff through the courts, NRA is going to end up, their pockets are going to be your friend. Again, whether or not they're actually going to do it is questionable, in my opinion, especially given how the NRA ILA has been in the last few years. But with a Democrat president, I think there's a better chance. There was somebody I knew who wanted Trump to win, not because they actually liked Trump, not back 4 years ago, not because they liked Trump, but because the media hated him so much that their idea was they gave Obama a pretty open ticket. They practically gave him a free pass to do whatever he wanted in 8 years, not wanted to criticize him because liberals like liberals. And their thought was, if Trump ends up as president, they're going to be so upset with a Republican, especially Trump being up there, they're going to scrutinize every little thing he does, which is good for the country ultimately. And say what you want to about the media, we want our president and all of our government officials under scrutiny. So that's kind of where I'm thinking is, I'm not saying it's definitely going to, but you have a better shot at them taking a Democrat president's EOs to court than you do a Republicans, in my opinion. I think if Trump wrote an EO to ban AR-15s, NRA wouldn't say a word about it. Biden does it, NRA will be all over the courts.
I think you're accurate. Now, the nice thing is we already have the in common use dictate or ruling or whatever it is. But anyway, yeah, Warsaw, I'd say that there's a lot of truth to that. We're in an endless loop depending on the NRA. The fact is that over the last 100 years, 120 years, there is not a piece of anti-gun legislation that doesn't have the NRA's fingerprints on it. So
yeah, and that's why it's. I'm not saying NRA is good. I don't think they're good, and I think they need to be dealt with. And I think other organizations like FPC and GOA are going to be in a much better position, but they've got to get their strength up. I don't know if they're there yet to take on.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, NRA is this big dragon. At this point, they're starting to get tamed instead of taking care of it. Until you get another dragon big enough, you're going to have to keep the one you've got because it's something at least.
And honestly,
they're not great.
The other thing is the NRA draws the ire of all these anti-gun groups. And then those of us who are pro-gun know that really they're not. It's kind of like when you walk into a yard. Yeah. You walk into a yard and there's a big old bull mastiff there. And then you've got this little, I wouldn't say chihuahua, but, maybe a little golden retriever or something. And so you're paying attention to the bull mastiff because that's the dog that looks like he can take you. And then you do something threatening, and the next thing you know, you find out that this is a family. This golden retriever is one of those family dogs that will just lay its life on the line for its family. And all of a sudden, that attack came out of nowhere. So,
yeah, and that's a great point. Is as long as they're taking all of the attention. It'd be interesting. I wish I knew this was going to come up because it'd be interesting to see what the budget is for the two. Because I think that would kind of drive my point home a little bit of the money's just not there yet. The manpower and the money just are not there yet within the FPC and the GOA. It'll get there, but they got to grow first.
Well, let's just see if we can find that out. Because if they are, I believe that they are a nonprofit. So.
Right. They are nonprofit, so you can find them. You just got to kind of dig into what are they actually spending. And the problem is that, like, for instance, ILA is only one part of the NRA, and I don't know how deep their budget actually goes.
Let's see. I can find from tax year 2017, GOA had a total revenue of basically $2.25 million. NRA.
Yeah. So NRA had a revenue of $378 million in that year. Now, again, I don't know how much of that goes to legislative affairs, though. And same thing with GOA. We don't know how much that's going to legislative affairs. But the fact that they've got a $378 billion revenue.
Well, I can tell you, though, that.
And they're actually in the red.
So from that $2.25 million in 2017, just over 600,000 was all of the salaries and wages. So, I mean, so theoretically, the rest of that went into. Well, there's going to be advertising and things like that. Anyway, we're getting off into the weeds.
Here we go. Nonprofit Explorer for the NRA. They're $990. That's what I wanted to find. Expenses.
Yeah, and I can get the 2018 990 from.
Yeah, I'm really curious because, I think that tells you a lot.
So while.
Oh, look at that. Their president only worked 20 hours per week. And according to them, I think their filings are off.
So while you're digging into that, I'm going to touch on a couple of things that I saw headlines for and did not save the URLs. So I'm going to veer off just a little bit into conspiracy theory, which I don't want to dwell in for very long. But maybe somebody can tell me where I saw this and I can find out if it's even a reliable source, since I can't find them now. One, I saw some comment, and we're going to have to circle back around and talk about the back end of this. But so the liberal fear that I keep hearing repeated is that Trump won't concede the election, blah, blah, which he doesn't have to, and that he will refuse to turn power over at Biden's inauguration. Well, we're going to come back. We're going to come back to that. Eli. I know, Elias, that burns you every time it gets said. But I saw a headline today that said something to the effect of Justin Trudeau, and for those of you who don't know, that is the Prime Minister of Canada, stated that in the event that Trump refuses to leave office, that the Canadian military is standing by to come into the United States and render assistance. Now, if you send an armed military across sovereign borders without a request from the sovereign country, isn't that an act of war?
Yeah, unless they're invited.
Right, well, that's what, yeah.
Yeah, unless they're invited.
So, and then that would be where we might have to invoke the behind every blade of grass clause, and yeah. Anyway, so there's that one, but now I can't find the article. For all I know, it was from The Onion, and it, doesn't count for a hill of beans.
Right. Now now theoretically, let's unpack it a little bit. Theoretically, on Inauguration Day, Joe Biden becomes president, and I don't know who exactly can invite something, whether it would be a Congress or something like that. I suppose there is an argument that there would be some legal way to do it, where it would not be an act of war because they would be invited. Having said that, I mean, if he really did say that, I think he's just kind of an idiot. Well, and there would be no reason for that.
Using both Google, which doesn't surprise me that they might suppress something, and DuckDuckGo, I cannot find anything else on this. So, again, for all I know, it was an Instagram meme page that I saw that on. So,
yeah, I'm hoping so, because that'd be.
So again, we're kind of veering off into conspiracy theory, and I left my tinfoil in the kitchen, so that could be problematic. And then the other thing, sorry, I've got a kitten wandering around, and I'm making sure that she's not eating cords. So that's all I need is for her to.
You just don't want her eating all your snacks.
Well, I don't want her trying to play catch with the blades on the processor fan, and it would cause my processor to overheat. That'd be problematic. Riemann thinks that he found what we were talking about. Can you get me enough information in the chat? I know you can't drop links in the chat, but if you can give me enough information, I will actually find that and we'll put it up on screen. And or if you can even tell me what the source was. Like I said, if it's the Onion, it was the Onion. That's fine.
So
go ahead.
No, I was gonna all right. While we're waiting on that, he sent it to you. So while we're waiting on that, I will say, okay. So I looked it up real quick, and in 2018 filing for the NRA spent $4.3 million in lobbying or campaigns, $618,000 in lobbying, and $23 million in legal fees. For legal, and now it doesn't break it down. These are just expenses, but it gives you an idea of the purse that they hold. In that same year, the FPC had a $1 million total for all expenses, period. I can't find their breakdown. And the GOA in 2018 spent only $61,000 in legal and no lobbying, no campaigning. So this is kind of where I was saying before that, if we have somebody that the NRA can clearly say this is, the other side, maybe then they'll actually direct some of that $23 million in legal fees to stopping the other side from imposing their will on people, versus the GOA and the FPC that they don't have the pockets. I mean, if you're looking at GOA at only $61,000 for legal altogether, I think that might get them a donut at the Supreme Court. I'm not really sure. And the FPC, $1 million total expenses, you're probably looking at maybe $50K then in legal, and at that point they get like the donut hole, and that's really it. So that's what I was saying before. Until we get those organizations up, you're going to have to rely on the NRA because they're the only ones who have the money for this kind of thing, unfortunately. And so anyway, I just wanted to put a close to that.
So Riemann, I don't know this exactly what I was looking for. If I do find it, I'll post that on social media because I was in the middle of something else when I saw that come across either on Instagram or Parler, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then I was so.
Yeah, it could be because I remember in 2000 the Onion had an article that the Queen was going to take back the U.S. because we clearly couldn't manage ourselves.
That's I did just see though that the CEO of Pfizer sold his company stock immediately after the vaccine announcement. That doesn't make it seem sketchy at all.
That's not weird at all.
So, yeah.
I also like how the vaccine came out within 48 hours of them declaring Biden the winner. That wasn't.
Yeah, a little suspicious.
That's not weird.
Okay, well, the other conspiracy theory-ish, and I only say conspiracy theory because, once again, I can't find my source. I saw something earlier saying that one of these swing states that's been in such focus recently, has already started adjusting things based on, recounts, and has tentatively taken their electoral votes back. Not that anything's official, and that brought Biden down below the 270 that he needs to win. But once again, I can't find a source for that, so I will swear to nothing. It may have been a fever dream.
You're about as good as the regular
media
right now.
I'm doing great. No, that's not true.
I have this claim, but I can't actually back it up. A guy in a bathroom stall told me.
That's no, because regular media, I would state it as fact, and then I would.
That's true. You wouldn't claim. You just be like, it just
I
is.
would throw
Don't ask
together
me.
a blog real quick with some real official looking pictures and then cite that blog as my source.
So, I mean, no states could really take back their electoral
Because
votes
they haven't been
because they haven't
certified,
actually
yeah.
certified anything. And they're the ones who are reporting the numbers. So the most they could do is say, hey, our latest count pushed Biden down and Trump up. That's about the only thing they could do. And looking at really quickly at maps, I mean, most places are reporting at 99%, which is usually about where they sit at the end of it. I'm not really sure why they never seem to sit at 100, but you know what? A lot of times I think that might be absentee ballots and mail-in ballots that they don't have to count anymore because they know there's no way that it can turn over. Which is what kind of happened in Pennsylvania. When Pennsylvania called it, it was because the outstanding ballots were less than the gap between Trump and Biden, the alleged. Which, I mean, to be fair, it's an 800,000 vote difference right now.
And Warsaw, I was actually pondering exactly that same thing. It was legitimately a shower thought the other day that, we have, ironically, we have things that are honestly privilege that are being cried over as though they are God-given rights, and yet we're suppressing God-given, constitutionally protected rights. That tripped me up a little bit the other day too. Maybe I was even. Do you guys ever, like, when you're by yourself and have nothing better to do, go through the mental exercise of debating somebody on some topic? I was actually having a pro-life debate against a theoretical opponent the other day, and it was. I was thinking about the fact that the irony is that they are fighting for the right to deprive another human being of their life and, by association, liberty and potential pursuit of happiness, and yet trying to suppress my right to keep and bear arms. So, anyway, well, hey, let's go back, though, and talk about, well, I guess you kind of did. So, on the day of the inauguration, providing that the states certify everything and Biden, in fact, keeps the 280 whatever electoral votes that he currently has. And so Trump allegedly has threatened to barricade himself in the Oval Office. Well, once again, that may be a Babylon Bee headline. Although the
no, that was actually reported in CNN and Fox that he was telling aides that he would lock himself in the Oval Office.
Given your,
and I'll let everybody make their own determination.
Your sources there, I actually will trust the Babylon Bee over, but that's.
I mean, to be fair, the reason I mentioned both of those said it was because those are both usually on the opposite side of the ideological spectrum. So they're both reporting it.
But not recently.
Maybe there's a small sliver of truth in there. In other words, that maybe the person they talked to was actually an aide.
That could be.
And that nothing else could actually be true about the statement, but that they actually did talk to an aide.
Fair enough. So yes, Warsaw. I remember the Battle of Athens. I remember reading the news about it. I wasn't there for it. How old do you think I am? But
I also wouldn't say Battle of Athens is the same as here either. So
anyhow, although if we're talking electoral fraud and corrupt politicians, I see the connection there. Anyway, but that said, the states certify everything and certify Biden as the new president. And then Trump does barricade himself in the Oval Office. I hope they sell popcorn and tickets to watch.
It'll definitely be
entertaining. Because that's going to be entertaining. I just. I'm not sitting here saying that I think that Biden is the better choice between these two individuals. I, yeah,
No, but we have
right,
laws and things that need to
right.
be done. That's what's kept the country in a somewhat peaceful state for a couple hundred years.
So yeah, that would
Yeah.
be entertaining.
But that is the big conspiracy by the left now, and I actually do know people who I know one person who actually is concerned that that's going to happen, and that somehow Trump is not going to he won't concede, and then he won't give up power, and then he's going to take a military hostile takeover. I'm like, you have no idea how our system works, do you? And this is not a person who I would consider dumb. I actually know this person well. He's definitely not dumb, but it kind of tells you how they're getting into people's
Would this
heads.
be a mutual acquaintance? Oh, okay.
No,
Because,
no, nobody you know.
that just
No,
that
nobody
just
you know.
sounds like a conversation that I might have missed in a Discord server we're both on.
No, but the person that you're thinking of is also not
correct.
dumb. But again, they get into it's so easy to get wrapped up in there. And don't get me wrong, there's people on both sides. There are people who are pro-Trump who are also smart and have gotten their heads in a weird place because of the media. So I had to kind of talk to this person at the ledge and go, hey, do you have any idea how our system
Right.
works? So there's absolutely no threat of Trump taking over. It just doesn't work that way. Our system doesn't work that way. Trump doesn't have to concede the election. At this point, there's nothing for Trump to do. Trump can just sit there and stare at the wall, which apparently is what he's doing lately. I was reading an article earlier about the fact that he canceled all of his public appearances and has not really talked to anybody. He's just staring at the wall, apparently. But no, what happens is, I think the electors have to be certified by the governors by like December 8th or 9th. On December 14th, the election takes place. The Electoral College votes. December 23rd is when like the due date that they have to actually be in Congress, and then a couple days before, somewhere around early January, the Electoral College's votes were actually read out in the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives certifies the election at that point. Once the election is certified by the House of Representatives, that's it. And if Biden is the winner, and the end of this comes out to how it's looking, that Biden is going to be the winner, declared winner, then that's it. Biden's the winner. There's nothing for Trump to do at this point. And at noon on January 20th, Biden becomes the next president, and Trump officially becomes the former president. And that's all there is to it. There's nothing for Trump. It's not like Trump has some, as I told the guys, not like Trump's got the magical scroll of truth and hands it over to Biden and says, here you go. Here's all the knowledge you need to be president. It doesn't work that way.
He's got the only key to the front door of the White House.
Yeah, exactly. We can go with that one. I mean, even the guy who carries the, everybody knows about the nuclear football that goes everywhere with the president. At noon on January 20th, Biden's got his own guy standing there with the nuclear football, and the guy who's holding it next to Trump completely ignores anything Trump says to him because he no longer works for him. That's how our system works. Now, short of a military coup, nothing's going to happen. And we all know, anybody who reads the news or, pays attention, really opens their eyes, knows the generals are not loyal to Trump in any way. Beyond, he's the commander-in-chief right now and will follow lawful orders. And on January 20th at noon, we will no longer follow that guy who used to be the president. So, it's that thing of everybody's freaking out thinking. And you know what? If Trump barricaded himself in the Oval Office, the Secret Service does their job very well.
Yeah, because at that point, he's the threat to the president.
Him. Exactly. He is now in an unauthorized area. At that point, he becomes citizen Trump again, and he's now in an unauthorized area, and the Secret Service, while protecting him because he's a former president, so receives Secret Service protection, will at the same time remove him from the place. And like you said, at that point, it's time to get popcorn because I really hope the cameras are rolling, because that'll be watch.
So, in related news, there have been reports that there were voting machines that had out-of-date software that caused, in one Michigan county, it says 6,000 votes were changed They were placed for President Trump and Republican candidates, and they were changed to their Democrat counterparts. That's, again, just in one county in Michigan. And I sent you a bunch of links yesterday. And
yeah. And and that's definitely one of those. Well, you know how I feel about technology and elections.
right, you would think, though. Okay, here's the thing. I went in my small town. We have one polling location.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, this is the fourth or fifth time that I have voted in an election since moving to this house. Ordinarily, my longest wait is 20 minutes. I was in queue for an hour and a half yesterday. Wrong day. Last Tuesday. My thought is, okay, if we're going to be using electronic means anyway, why don't we have like a secure network set up that requires a VPN client so that it's registering MAC addresses and just vote on secure devices?
Because MAC addresses can be
Spoofed, yes.
Spoofed anyway. The fact is, if you're using electronics, you're relying on electronics and a 100% safe system, and that's just not going to happen.
Okay, here we go. I found those links. So one was there was the headline from CNN that says Trump allies support his un-American challenge. Now here's the deal. Maybe he.
I think I said that, didn't I?
Yeah, maybe you sent that to me. Yeah, you sent that to me.
Yeah,
and here's the deal. Whether he is being a pouty sore loser or whatever, if there is indication that there has been election malfeasance, I don't think it's un-American at all to want to trace that down.
I mean, challenging things is one of the most American things I can think of, for better or for worse. I mean, we challenged the British.
That went okay for us.
That went pretty well. I mean, it's what we do.
So, here's one of the articles, though. It's from the Washington Times. From I guess it's a watchdog group called Judicial Watch. I don't know. Did you happen to look into their background at all?
Yeah, they're fine. They're fine-ish. They're right wing. So, they try
Judicial Watch has released a comparison study of Census Bureau population statistics and state voter registration data to reveal a notable disparity. They said they found that 352 U.S. counties in 29 states managed to have an aggregate 1.8 million more registered voters than eligible voting age citizens. And that, if that's the case, if they have...
How many more? What was the difference? I'm sorry.
Between all 352 counties, 1.8 million. So, okay. And now, did all 1.8 million alleged ghost voters vote Democrat? I mean, that'd be a pretty big difference. And we're talking what? We're talking 1/3% of the entire population of the U.S., not just voting age.
Right, but that would account for about 20% of the difference in votes.
Well, and
because as of right now, Biden is up about 5 million votes.
So the registration, or the study found 8 states showing statewide registration exceeding 100%, including Alaska, Colorado, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Vermont. And at least 2 of those are states that everybody was watching very closely late last week. So,
Right.
and again, and I'll give you guys the link if you guys want to look into it. And there's a link to their study. The thing is if they can easily verify 1.8 million, and especially if they're in, let's face it, if it's in 8 states, maybe it won't flip the totality of the popular vote, but it could absolutely flip the electoral vote. So,
right.
And then I found this. The Attorney General Barr has authorized the Department of Justice to probe, quote, substantial allegations of voting irregularities. So basically, all that to say that the Attorney General evidently sees enough that looks fishy to dig into it further. And that doesn't necessarily, again, mean that anything will change.
Right. And it could all be on the up and up. I mean, we just don't know. One of the things I remember we talked about last week was, I think you and I talked about just privately, was the fact that, people are talking about how, states flipped and seemed like that was sketchy. Some people were talking about states flipping. I'm like, no, not really. The states that flipped back were Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all of which the last time those guys went Republican was early 90s. So it's not really surprising that they would go back to blue. They went red last election cycle for Trump, but that's because people really didn't like Clinton. And if you take Trump, I don't think it's any surprise that there's a lot of people who don't like Trump. So it's not really beyond the realm of possibility and even probability that the country would vote for
Right.
Biden. It's really not. I mean, a lot of people voted for Trump in 2016 because he wasn't the politician, and they were hoping to get away from the career politician. And a lot of people have been fine with what he's done. A lot of people have been disappointed with what he's done, and I'm not really debating either side of that. But it's not really would be that surprising for Biden to win against Trump, and for those states to flip back to blue. It really wouldn't surprise me. Having said that, if there's any voting irregularities, then yeah, they should be investigated. And even if the end result is still Biden won, and Democrats were just padding their numbers, or the other side that nobody wants to talk about, whether or not the Republicans were trying to themselves cheat, it should be uncovered. Either way. And I think one of the things that Biden should really do right now, if he was smart, would be to say, yeah, okay, do a recount. Let's do it. Go ahead, recount them all. Give the transparency. Let them do whatever they want to. Because if you have the confidence that there's not been any issues from your side of the aisle, then you shouldn't have a problem. You should say, go ahead, do it. Go ahead and recount them all. It's not like the inauguration's next week and we got to hurry and get this done. They've got a month. He could look at it and say, hey, we got a month. Go ahead. Recount them in every single state.
Yeah, count them by hand.
Hand count every single one. And we'll bring in the television cameras and we'll do it right here on the House floor. Let's do it. Bring in the television cameras. Let C-SPAN cover this. We'll have a camera over every single ballot. Because if you got confidence that your side has not cheated to the degree that has been claimed, I'm not going to say that localities aren't doing dumb things. Local, then you shouldn't have an issue saying, let's bring 100% transparency. Biden claims he wants to bring transparency back to the White House. And yet, in the last couple press conferences he's done, he's refused to take any questions and walked off stage. They start to ask him questions, he just walks right off stage. To me, call for it. Call and say, yeah, you know what? I agree with President Trump. You talk about wanting to heal a nation from the divisiveness. Say, you know what? I agree with the president. We want 100% transparency. You know what? Some of these things do a little bit weird. Let's do it. Let's bring in the cameras. Let's bring in the observers. Let's recount every single state. will show that, yes, I did win, and we didn't do anything on this grand scale that's being claimed. To me, I think that would be I don't know. I think that would be a really powerful message that you plan on being transparent and that you have faith that the people do want to elect you. And finally, that you have faith that your party isn't repeating 2016. We all know what the DNC did in 2016. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I that's my thoughts on it. Is he should call for it. Biden should go ahead and say, you know what, let's do it.
And there's still scenarios we haven't even discussed. Unfaithful electors could still put Trump back in the White House. That would result in baying for blood, though. I'll guarantee that.
It would be really, really tough because there's no federal law against it. There's absolutely no federal law. Now, there have been faithless electors. I can't remember if they've ever actually changed an election. I don't think they've ever actually changed an election. They were doing it to make a point. It happened in 2016. It did not change the outcome of the election. And but there have been faithless electors. There's nothing you can do by federal law. I think some states have laws, but not federal law.
And I'll tell you what, most state maps that I've seen, and I'd hope to put some research into this and have solid numbers. I just didn't. Of course, how each state's electoral votes get divvied up is up to the state.
Correct. Nebraska and Maine divvy them up differently than anybody else. Most states, 49 out of the 50 states, you win it all. Yeah. It's only in Maine and Nebraska where they divide them up, and it has to do with if you get someone like each candidate, I think, gets at least one, and then whoever wins the popular vote in that state gets the additional ones, because the electorals, for those who don't know, is the electors for each state are equal to the number of representatives and Senate. So each state has however many for the representatives and then 2 for the Senate. So I think I can't remember if it's Maine or Nebraska where like they divvy it up, and then whoever won the popular vote, they divvy up the representatives the ones, and then the 2 extra, as it were, for the senators go to equal the senators rather go to the one who won the popular vote.
Anyway, what I was saying though is that that was anyway from me looking away, not anyway from what you were saying. Sorry, that sounded really just like whatever. Shut up, Elias. No, that's not what I meant. From the state maps that I've seen, though, if they were to give the percentage of electoral votes that the candidate won of counties, not total popular vote, but counties, I think that the country would have a red wave. But anyway. Yeah, because...
So it looks like the closest it ever came, by the way, you're talking about the faithless electors, to changing an election was in 1796. But it didn't actually change the election. That's the closest it ever came. Yeah. Yeah. The only other times were when Nixon was up, one of the electors voted for George Wallace instead, but also said that if it would have changed the election, he wouldn't have done it.
So it was just...
And in 2016, a couple of them flipped to just prove a point.
So, okay. So it's usually just to prove a point.
So is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No.
And the last... See, if we can trust... and this is a big if. If we can trust Google's current results, then let's see. It has Trump at 217, Biden at 290. It would take more than 1 or 2.
I think I told you this was from a couple days ago, and now a lot more votes have come in. That at the time, it was 100,000 votes across the most contentious states.
Yeah.
And now that has really increased. So I mean, it's possible that there was enough fraud to change the election. I'll be out. I mean, to be completely honest, could there have been enough fraud to change the election? Anything's possible. Is it likely? Not really. But again, I think that if there's any question of irregularities, it should be investigated.
Absolutely.
There have been calls for irregularities for years, and people have kind of ignored it. Maybe this is the year we finally actually try to find a better way to do our elections and to get minimize this question of irregularities and fraud.
And for those playing the home game, the answer is not get rid of the Electoral College.
No, that's a horrific answer.
Because now my demographics tell me that none of you are viewing from Chicago or Los Angeles or Orlando.
Not really your target audience,
right,
probably.
Right. So what I'm saying there is if we do away with the Electoral College, your vote doesn't count if you don't live. I think that the 10 largest cities in the United States contain more than 51% of the voting population.
It's a lot higher than that, I believe.
Is it?
I mean,
or is it the
I saw a thing the other day that was like, I saw a thing the other day that showed that Los Angeles had a higher population than like 8 states combined.
I can believe that.
Yeah, so it doesn't take much.
So yeah, I'm constantly, all of the woke teenagers that I work with on a day-to-day basis, they think, whoever the population votes for is who should be president, blah, blah, blah. We need to get rid of the Electoral College. I'm like, so you don't want your vote to count at all? Well, yeah, that's why I want to get rid of the Electoral College. All right, pump the brakes. Time.
You live in Indiana.
Time to get educated.
Yeah, your voting gonna count. Now, I would not mind seeing it going to like a ranked system, maybe, like Nebraska and Maine, where it's not a winner take all, where it kind of takes into account who are the other people you're voting for, who are the other people who have gotten a lot of votes, and going from there. I've seen some things before where people have kind of broken down where maybe it can be modified a little bit to where it doesn't become, because one of the arguments against the Electoral College, I think, is a valid argument that in a lot of years it comes down to 2 or 3 swing states. So I think that's a valid argument, because at that point now you're ignoring the people in the cities and you're ignoring the people throughout the Midwest and those other states, the flyover states. So by going to a ranked system, it takes the pressure off those swing states and forces them to do a little bit better in some of those other ones.
Yeah.
So I think going to something like that might be an answer. And that would, of course, that's going to be difficult. That's going to be an amendment to the Constitution.
Well, and then that also, though, how does that fall? Does that fall afoul of the 10th Amendment?
Nope, not if it's an amendment to the Constitution.
And everybody, I'd like you to
amend the Constitution.
I'd like you guys to meet Smokey. She's a relatively new addition to the Tactical Review household.
To your point, the states could decide on their own to do it ranked, like Nebraska and Maine. The only way Congress can force them to do it is by because what the Constitution says is that the state legislatures will decide how the electoral votes are decided. So that I can't remember what article was that. Article 2 actually says that this is how the election is going to be. So if Congress wanted to do something, they could not do it by legislation. There would have to be an amendment that amends that section of the article to say that every state will do it this way. So I just want to clarify, because you did bring up a good point of the states, how you get to decide that.
Well, guys, like normal, we didn't come here with every answer. Matter of fact, tonight we came with more questions than answers. Just trying to get you guys' thoughts and juices flowing, and try to present the issues in a slightly more fair and balanced way, and look at multiple sides of the argument than you might get in the typical mainstream, or even social media. So, guys, I appreciate you joining here tonight. Uh, Once again, if you'll throw a thumbs up on the video and make sure that you're subscribed to the live stream channel as well as the main channel, that will help you to know when we're going live and when we upload new content over on the main channel. And I've made some strides in the last couple of days to try to make all of this easier for you guys. Once again, if you weren't with us right at the beginning of the stream, starting today, you can go to live.tachreview.com, and it will either take you to last week's live stream or the scheduled live stream for the current week once I get that schedule. So, and if nothing else, it will take you to the live channel so that you can make sure that you're subscribed. And then also, if you're trying to share the channel with your friends, you can just tell them to go to tachreview.com, and that will take them to the main channel now. So, more interested in Canada at this point since the last time they touched U.S. soil was War of 1812. Riemann, I will look into that. I really wish I saw that this afternoon, and I did not bookmark anything. I was in the middle of some other stuff for work, and it really just caught me so flat-footed that I said a few choice words at my computer at work and read off the headline to my coworker, and then we went and hung some TVs and stuff, and then I lost it. So, all right. Speaking of social media and news media suppression, make sure you're following the channel on social media, including now added just this week over on Parler. I've kept the same username, Tactical Review 2019, so that I am as easy as possible to find across the board. If you'd like to pick yourself up some channel merchandise, you can do that at the store. And we're going to use that fancy new domain name. You can go to store.tachreview.com. And right now that's going to send you over to the Teespring store. I'm waiting on some technicalities to bring that a little bit more in-house. But you can pick yourself up some t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee cups, various channel merchandise. And you'll support the channel with a few dollars with every purchase that you make. You can also support the channel directly over on Patreon or Subscribestar. Supporting us there will get you early access to our new videos. You have some input into different things that the channel is doing through polls and whatnot. And I'm working on cooking up some other special goodies for my Patreon supporters, just to say thank you for all you do for the channel. Speaking of people who are doing good things for the channel, I definitely want to make sure to thank our channel sponsor, Freedom Reloads and Arms, down in Linden, Indiana. You can find Freedom Reloads over on Facebook. He posts pictures of the inventory he's got in. Obviously focuses on reloading components and equipment. Also has new and used firearms in stock. So if you're coming through the Midwest, coming through Indiana, make sure you swing down through Linden and stop in and see Skylar over at Freedom Reloads and Arms. And then obviously I can't end this without saying a big thank you to my co-host Elias. Make sure you go over and check him out on Facebook. And yeah, that's the only social you do, right?
Yeah,
not a 14-year-old girl. Or what are we over on Parler, guys? Are we just a bunch of ultra-conservative nutjobs? That's probably accurate.
I mean, you're kind of that.
Wow, that's accurate. Well, guys, with that, I'm going to wrap it up here. If don't have anything else, and Riemann, I think you're right. if Trudeau actually said that, that probably could be prosecuted on the world court or on the battlefield as a declaration of war. So, anyway, once again, we are not lawyers, constitutional or civil.
I just play.
I didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Guys, appreciate you guys joining us. Until next time, shoot straight, stay safe.